Live streaming is on.
Okay. And we're live. Yeah, it automatically goes live now. All right. You ready to go?
Totally ready.
Get green. Come on, internet.
Mine's yellow.
So's mine. All right, let's go anyway. Welcome to episode number 318 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. You can find us by searching for Beyond Social Media Show. We are recording live on YouTube on August 7, 2020. A lot of things to talk about this week, including citing creators, why Microsoft, TikTok, YouTube personas, WP Auto updates, rooftop tennis, messy middle journey, Walmart drive-ins, ad agency diversity disclosures, Google News in context, Zoom bombers, branding mistranslation, Trump's clean internet, B2B salesperson trait statistics. At the end of the show, you want to stick around for, but we kick it off with the best story of the week, and BL always has that honor. BL was the best story.
Well, we've talked about this before, and I have to admit that I was recently guilty of doing this very same thing. But what happened was after Jonathan Swan did that brilliant interview with Trump the other day, there was a video that was posted on Twitter, and it was edited to show Trump interviewing himself, and it's hilarious. And the Lincoln Project put it up, and they have, as you know, a vast audience, and they put on it, who did this? It's brilliant. So when they tweeted that, someone named Per Oxbom, I think is how you say it. He's a Swedish communication theorist, and he's author of the book called Digital Compassion, and which we talk about a lot. And the book is about managing ethics in tech. And he tweeted a link with a big band over it that said Justin T. Brown is the creator. The title of his post was Trump Debates Trump, Always Credit Creators. So his blog post begins, yet another video is about to make the rounds without crediting the original creator. The maker in this case is Justin T. Brown, who has made the edit of the Axios interview with Trump to make it appear as if Trump is interviewing or debating himself, and the result is hilarious. So as he said, hundreds upon thousands of people were likely to download the video from different locations and share it either, and this is what people do, either as their own content or pretend they didn't know where they found it and that they uploaded it. If they uploaded it to their own account, then they should be saying, well, here's where I found it. So, why isn't even that source credited? And because there's always some source. And he explains how he and a colleague found Justin T. Brown, who had only one other video on YouTube and 6 subscribers at the time. And the other video he made was kind of an incoherent one about Biden. So he found that somebody named Austin Tolan had done due diligence and found Justin's Instagram account, which was where he originally posted it. And this really is a big issue online, and it's something that happens every day, several times a day. So I was really glad to see him bringing this up and, calling the Lincoln Project to task for it, because they have no excuse for having done that.
Well, I mean, they asked who is it. They asked who made it, so I mean, it's not like they're like posing it as their own. As you're describing that, I haven't seen the Biden video, but you described it as incoherent. That might exactly be the point, because Biden can be incoherent, especially when he was in the debates during the primary.
Let's hope not.
There should be a technological fix for this. We should have some type of open standard that embeds metadata about the creator in videos that can be extracted by social platforms to display who the creator is.
A long time ago, if you'll recall, you were able to tag your your writings so that Google would credit you in search. And I don't know what happened to that. That stopped after a while, but there is a way that could happen. And, there's kind of no excuse for it not happening at this point in time, because this is years after Google had that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, Google indexes stuff as it's posted online, so they do know when something was posted. They have the intelligence at this point to understand what's in content, so you'd think that they'd be able to
you had
figure
a
that out.
tag that you had to put on your blog, for example, and that tag just made it go credit you as the author of the content. So even when somebody scraped your content, it still said it was yours.
Yeah.
And they did that for a while, and then they just stopped. Like so many good things that Google does, and they stopped doing it.
This is a story we've been following for several weeks now. TikTok. What's going to happen to TikTok? It is, like we mentioned last week, apparently Microsoft is in talks with ByteDance to acquire at least the data from TikTok of U.S. users, if not more. There's a long write-up on The Verge by Tom Warren with the question, basically, why does Microsoft want TikTok? Which is a good question. Microsoft is, the maker of the Office software that we've all been using for decades. The owner of Xbox, which might give you a hint there, but the owner of LinkedIn. So they are mostly a business-oriented company, and they've kind of failed. Aside from Xbox, they've failed at attracting having consumer-related products.
And kids.
And kids, exactly. Yeah. So you start using Microsoft stuff once you get into the professional world. But that's the point of this article, is like you can go nowadays as a kid, grow up without using any Microsoft products until you get into the professional workforce. There's, people growing up using Android phones, Apple phones, Chromebooks in classrooms. There's Gmail, there's Google Docs, so you don't need the Office suite anymore. So, getting all this data and all these users from TikTok is a way of reaching the younger generation of workers who will eventually be using Microsoft, they hope. But the other point the article makes is the data that is available from the TikTok platform on users, on consumers, on consumer-oriented rather than B2C, rather than B2B audiences, and giving them that insight will give them that data will give them insight into what is popular among kids, so they can use that for building new products for Xbox or new games. Help game developers figure out what's going to appeal. It also says you can use some of this data to improve products like HoloLens and the Kinect for Xbox. It's a long read. It's well worth it. I won't go into any more than that, but that's a good good take on why Microsoft would be interested in buying TikTok.
And then, was it yesterday or the day before that Facebook launched Reel, which is their competitor for it?
Coincidence, I think.
Yeah, no coincidence. So this is really an interesting piece. We are all in our own little filter bubble. I would get different results from a Google search than you will get, and someone else will get, based on what we read and what we look at, and how long we spend in various places. We all get different results. So the filter bubble, this is called TheirTube, and it's a filter bubble simulator that lets you see how 6 different personas see sites recommended to them on their videos in YouTube in their feed. This is from a Serial Marketer's post by Tom Okahara. And, I remember hearing a rabbi say one time that if you only read things that are, that you believe, you'll never expand your view to know what other people believe. And that's like the people who watch Fox all day. All they know is what's on Fox all day, and so on. So, we live in this polarized society. It's sometimes impossible to talk to family members who have different political views, let alone who look at different videos. So where do they get their information? And so here's a way look at what they see. And it's an open source project developed by Tomo Kahara, that's his name, that shows you how YouTube's recommendations are drastically different and shape someone else's experience as a result of their worldview. So it was one of 8 winners of the Mozilla Creative Media Awards in 2020, and that was about art and advocacy and AI's effect on media and truth, which is in itself really an interesting idea. Now, the project explores how recommendation engines present different realities to different people. And so you see 5 different, very different personas, including a conspiracist, a fruitarian, somebody who only eats fruit, a racist persona, and you experience how their recommendations differ. And then you can go back and forth through dates to see different results, and you can click on a history arrow and see the viewing history of each persona in their watch history. And they're asking for additional recommendations for bubbles. And Tomo Kahara explains, he said, I think the proverb, fish discover water last, can also be said about how we are blind to the nature of the recommendation bubble that we're in. And with AI curating almost all of what we see, the only way to get a better perspective is to see what others are seeing. And so offering a tool to understand what other recommendation bubbles look like, he hopes that he's going to help people get a better understanding and perspective on their own recommendation bubble, and also expand the view that they take. I think it's a fascinating project.
It is fascinating. I've got a recommendation for them. I would love to see those recommendation bubbles according to the Ocean's personality type breakdown, the 5 big personality traits: openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, extroversion, and neuroticism. Those basic 5 personality psychological profiles of personality types. I'd love to see the
well, you
filter
can
bubbles
suggest it, but I'm not sure that those are the areas they're looking at. But you can suggest
they should.
it.
I'm telling them that they should.
Well, go to the site and tell them what to do. Go right ahead. It's open source. They want to hear from you.
Oh, good. Will they listen is the question.
You're such a cynic, honestly.
Yeah, well. You know, we here's a media consumption story. Marketers often talk about the consumer journey, and we think of it in linear terms, building from awareness to consideration to purchase to loyalty to advocacy, or whatever the different buckets of it. But it's the way that we figure out how people how to convert consumers into customers, and we think of it in terms of a narrative, because that's how we think. But Google Think with Google has some interesting research on the customer journey that scrambles that up. It's not linear. It's the messy middle. So they have, that's what they call it, the messy middle. We traditionally depict it as a linear progression, but they break it down to 2 different mental modes that are within the messy middle. There's exploration. It's an expansive activity, and there's evaluation, which is a reductive activity, right? People loop through these twin modes of exploration and evaluation as they're considering buying something, as they're considering a purchase, and so we need to think more in terms of that rather than, I mean, the linear progression is helpful in terms of when we market where, but to really understand that consumer behavior, it really is a messy middle. They break the cognitive biases during this process into 6 basic categories. There's category heuristics. So those are short descriptions of key product specifications that can simplify purchase decisions. There's the power of now. The longer you have to wait for a product, the weaker the proposition becomes. There's social proof, recommendations and reviews from others that are persuasive. There's scarcity bias. We all know about that. There's limited availability of a product, more desirable it becomes. There's authority bias, so you're being swayed by an expert or a trusted source. And then there's the power of free. Getting something free, even if it's unrelated, can be a motivator for people to purchase. So we'll put a link to this one in the show notes. This is also a longer read, but well worth the consideration.
do they show you how you measure these things?
Of course not. That's what
That's
what Google Analytics
consideration.
is for. You need to figure out the KPIs in the messy middle.
Okay, well, it would be nice if they would help.
Yeah.
You know? So this one's just beautiful. This happened. This is from the pasta brand Barilla, and I happen to like that brand because they have good gluten-free pasta. But they arranged a once-in-a-lifetime surprise for two young girls in Italy. And the two girls were living in buildings across the street from each other, and they began to play tennis across the rooftops. And I guess they dropped a lot of balls, but they were playing tennis across the rooftops, and their hero was Roger Federer. So a video of the two of them went viral, and just millions of people were looking at it. This is from a Sarah Sparry story in Adweek. So events like this are just what our poor little hearts need right now. And so everybody just looked at these two little girls. They were 9 and 11. And millions of people looked at it. And Barilla arranged a surprise visit from Federer, who was their hero. And so he not only came there, he played tennis across the roof with them, and then he took them to lunch, and he arranged for them to go to a tennis camp. And I could watch these videos all day long, and he signed their tennis balls and all this, but they surprised them. They were interviewing the girls. There were cameras and microphones everywhere, and they're interviewing them, and Federer was behind a curtain, and he's listening to them saying, he's my hero, and if I ever saw him, I would run and I would hug him, and I would ask him, to give me his autograph. Then he comes out, and the look on the face of the girls that he's actually there is like priceless. I mean, it's just such a wonderful thing. So, if you feel bad, just watch these again.
That's cute and very smart. The reaction videos always work, so it's a tried and true tactic. So are they playing tennis from rooftop to rooftop? One's on one rooftop. Wow, I haven't seen the video. I'll have to.
That's great.
I'll have to check that out. Wow,
they're pretty good tennis players. And Federer said he hasn't played in a while, and they were better than he was. Well,
if you're hitting it across from rooftop to rooftop, you got to have some level of skill.
They played every day, and that's what they did because they were in quarantine. They couldn't do anything else. So
mad skills.
Isn't that great?
That's great. So WordFence, the security plugin for WordPress, I love them because when there's a security risk internet-wide, they usually send out an email alerting people to the nature of that risk and what plugin was involved or whatever is going on. Their most recent email came, I think, yesterday or today, recently, is from Matt Berry, who talks about what WordPress's auto updates, which is going to be a new feature of WordPress version 5.5, which is scheduled for release on August 11. And so it will basically allow you to flip a switch and just have WordPress auto update itself, the core WordPress, or any plugins or themes that you've got installed in your WordPress on your WordPress site. You have the option to turn auto updates on for individual plugins and themes directly. It can be turned off. It's going to be turned off by default. So when WordPress updates to the newest version, it'll be turned off by default. And you'll only have an on and off toggle switch, so you won't have the option to select different types of updates, like security updates, or only minor releases, etc. But the reason they're doing this is to improve the security of WordPress installations across the board and make it easier for people who maintain sites to maintain them. They do point out some potential problems. I'm going to list a couple of them. The concurrent auto updates can fail. So if you've got a bunch of plugins and you turn on auto update, and you have all those plugins updating at the same time, the load on the server can cause, depending upon the type of hosting you have, the load on the server for all of those updates, all those plugins updating at once can cause them to fail. So that's something you would have to be concerned about. Difficulty in determining what changed. So when I update WordPress sites, I update, and there's several plugins that need to be updated. I update them individually.
I do too.
Update one, check out the site, see if everything's okay. Okay, worked. update the next, do the same thing. So if you're updating a bunch of plugins simultaneously, you don't necessarily know what changed if something goes wrong. If it breaks the site, you don't know which plugin broke the site. So that's an issue. Major version releases could have compatibility problems. So, you've got minor updates, bugs that are fixed and stuff, but then some plugins have major updates, and they have been known in the past to have compatibility problems with the core WordPress. And then the lack of canary releases for testing issues. So canary release is you release it for a small subset of your users, like 5% of your users get the release to test to see if it's okay, and then if it's okay for that 5%, you roll it out for the entire population. If you're doing auto updates, then obviously that's not happening. At the moment, nearly every update you do on your site is an attended update. You attend to the update, like I explained. You update. I update them individually. You know when your site has been updated when you do that. You can read the developer's change log. So if you're thinking about maybe I shouldn't update this one, you can check in, see what the developer has changed. You can see whether it's a critical security update you need to update right away. If it's just a bug fix, if it's a major release, and as I said, you can test your site if you update every plugin. And the more likely you're more likely to be able to determine any problems that way. They say there's 3 approaches you can use for the auto updates. You can turn it on for all plugins, which I will do for some sites, like just basic brochure sites that content doesn't really change. I know there's a limited number of plugins. They're well-regarded plugins. They're probably not gonna be an issue. I'd flip on the all update switch for that because it saves me time and I don't have to go and do it individually. Auto update for some plugins or off for all plugins. So that just depends upon the nature of your site. If you've got a mission critical site, if you're doing e-commerce, if you got an enterprise wide site, you're probably going to turn them all off and do them individually because there's too much at stake. I'll put a link in the show notes because there's a lot more to this post than I've described here, but it's well worth the read.
I've been letting WordPress do automatic WordPress updates for years. Never had a problem with that, but I update every plugin one by one because I want to see what they're doing and if I want it. So that's an interesting thing, though. So this is really fun and clever. Walmart is having drive-in theaters in 160 of its parking lots, and you are going to reserve online. And this is from a Review Geek article by Suzanne Humphreys. And so they start August 21st. They go through October 21st, and they're family-friendly films, and they're curated by the Tribeca Film Festival. So you reserve your free ticket and your socially distanced spot in the parking lot online. And then they have 320 movies, including Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, Black Panther, Teen Titans Go. They have The Goonies and Back to the Future and E.T., the extraterrestrial, one of my all-time favorites, Men in Black. And they have movies that the youngest kids are going to like Madagascar and Cars and the Lego Movie, which I also liked. And I love little kids' movies, by the way. And all the movies start at 7:30. And each movie experience is going to have Drew Barrymore is the virtual host. And some locations are going to get a surprise virtual or in-person appearance from celebrities like LeBron James and Jennifer Garner. And so you need to have access to an FM radio to hear the movie audio, and you have to wear a mask if you leave your car. And Walmart recommends that you order snacks and drinks through their delivery or pickup services. So once your order is confirmed, you get a QR code that lets your vehicle enter to the movie on the day that it plays. And I was telling you before the show, QR codes are turning up all over the place. My bank has them. You have to use a QR code to tell them you want to come in, and then they text you and tell you you're fifth in line or whatever, and then you wait around. And that's all very nice in the summer. It's going to be a lot of laughs in December and January and February. But restaurants are using them, and the QR code I thought was long gone, and it's back. And this is just so clever of Walmart to be doing this in their parking lots and having fun. And I think people will have a great time. I'm sure they'll sell out immediately.
Well, I mean, cinemas have been closed forever, and those of us who'd like to see movies would like to see movies. They have vast parking lots in Walmart, so they've got plenty of space to do it. The only thing that is missing, as I said before the show, is order online and have somebody delivering my groceries while I'm watching the movie.
Well, what's missing is Manhattan. I live in New York City. We don't have cars, and so we don't get to do this. And we used to be able to watch movies in Central Park, but those are canceled. We used to be able to watch them on rooftops. Those are canceled. There's no more outdoor movies in New York, and no way that we can take part in this. And I think that's kind of sad.
Sucks to be you.
Well, it sucks to be a New Yorker right now, because New York is no longer New York. And that's why people are leaving in droves, and why I'm thinking seriously about it, because why are we paying all this money if there's nothing to do?
Good point. This is a story I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I'm finally going to talk about it. This is from Star Tribune's D Pass, who reports on 32 Minnesota ad agencies that have promised to disclose their racial employment data and hire more people of color. Some of the most high-profile agencies are participating: Fallon, Carmichael Lynch, Collie McVoy, Padilla, Periscope, my old agency, Martin Williams is participating. It's the #CommitToChange campaign. It's being led by 600 and Rising, which is a newly formed nonprofit that is shining the spotlight on the lack of diversity in the advertising industry. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the article cites the percentage of ad managers who are Black shrank from 0.8% in 2010 to 0.7% last year. The percentage of Asians rose from 2 to 7%, and Hispanics at 9% and Native Americans at 1% stayed the same. So obviously, that's a huge preponderance of white people in the advertising agency, and a lot of the advertising reflects that. This organization was created by two Black advertising executives, one from Minnesota and one from New York. They wrote an open letter to the industry in June, urging agencies to disclose their hiring data and to commit to change. As of late July, they had 3,000 signatures. So a good development there, and a long needed development.
Absolutely. When I worked for a huge agency, I was trying to remember while you were talking how many African American people there were, and in my part of the firm there was one. Yeah. And I think there were 2 or 3 Hispanic people, but they were not executives. And I'm not so sure that it's different in other big agencies.
I don't think it is. There's desperately, it has driven me nuts, the lack of diversity in advertising and public relations. We've talked about ads that are racist. And I think some of them are intentionally racist. I think others are just cluelessness, and that's because there's not enough diversity. There aren't people of color in the room talking about, it's not a good idea to do this ad this way, right?
Yeah, well, there also aren't enough women, so we could go through.
Well, PR has plenty of women.
PR is a woman's business.
Problem with PR.
That's true, but in the ad business, there's more women, but when you start to look at the executives, not so many. So I'm out of good news. I'm on to bad news. Do you have more good news?
I got one more quick one. This is from The Verge's Sean Hollister, who reports that Google is experimenting with a new for context, quote unquote, feature in Google News that will link to a broader secondary story on the same topic, and it looks as if it's going to be from the same source. So it's not diverting traffic from one place to another, from one outlet to another, but it's just a way of providing readers with a greater sense of a larger view of what that particular story is about.
I like that idea, and I think that it would be a good idea in all media.
Yeah.
Really. So this is really a crazy story. This is from an Ars Technica story by John Brodkin. A few weeks ago, we talked about the big Twitter hack, and it turned out to be a Florida teenager who was the mastermind. And so he was in court with a judge on a Zoom call, and the judge neglected to set a password or lock the Zoom meeting, which was then taken over by a PornHub video and a bunch of people screaming Black Lives Matters and whatever. And so the judge kept trying to kick them out, but then more of them just kept coming. So during the hearing, the judge and the attorneys were interrupted with people shouting racial slurs, playing really loud music, showing pornographic images. And the thing that finally made them stop the whole thing and shut it down was a PornHub video. So the court obviously failed to take the very basic steps to prevent the hearing from being intruded. And so there is a guide from Ars Technica for securing Zoom meetings, and they wrote that in April. And Zoom has sent out countless emails saying, make sure that you have a waiting room and make sure that you have a password and lock the meeting when everybody's there. And I guess people don't read their emails. So, there's no excuse for that. And you can also limit screen sharing, and you can prevent these people from joining. So the Zoom bombing happened when the 13th Judicial Court of Florida in Tampa held a bail meeting for this kid, Graham Clark, who previously pleaded not guilty, and he's being held on $725,000 bail, and he faces 30 felony counts related to the Twitter attack that took place July 15th. And the judge, Christopher Nash, ruled against a request to lower his bail. But before that, the judge shut down the hearing for a short time, and he was hoping that a brief pause would end the problem. But when he reopened the meeting, users disguised as CNN and BBC News came in and interrupted. So, there's no excuse at this point in time for something at that level to not have a little bit of intelligence about what they're doing.
Yeah, well, the first rule of when you're trying a hacker is to lock down your video call to prevent hackers from wanting to hack a trial of a hacker, which seems like a very obvious thing that would potentially happen. So, yeah, I'd say that was the
no excuse for that. But I think Twitter should hire this kid to prevent hacking of the election. He has a bright future ahead of him, I'm sure.
Yeah, or the Russians. Somebody's going to pay him.
Exactly.
So here's a marketing related fail story. There's the Guardian's Charles Anderson writes about it. It's there's a Canadian brewery called Hell's Basement, and it is has a New Zealand Pale Ale Hulu Hulu beer. There's also a shop in New Zealand in Wellington that that branded one of their outlets with the same name, Huru Huru. Huru Huru is a Maori word meaning pubic hair. So Maori is an Eastern Polynesian language that's spoken by the Maori people. They're the indigenous population of New Zealand. Hell's Basement's co-founder Mike Patriquin acknowledged that the company thought that Huru Huru meant feather. Didn't realize it was a reference to pubic hair.
That's great.
And a spokesperson for the Wellington leather shops said they thought huru huru was intended to mean wool, feather, or fur. So make sure if you're using unfamiliar words that you do translations and understand exactly what they mean.
That is hilarious. And you have to, when you do the translations, it's a good idea to have a native speaker check what you're doing. That's great. So this is Mike Pompeo published the Trump administration's completely bonkers plan to build a Chinese-style digital wall around the internet. This is from a Gizmodo story by Whitney Kimball, and it's called the State Department Clean Network Plan. And you should be afraid of this one. You should be very afraid because it too closely resembles the Chinese control of its internet. And as Whitney Kimball noted in the story, this plan has it all: dictatorship, nationalism, paranoia, walls, bans, trade war, and extra legal blustering that could pressure companies to do what he wants to get him off their backs. And so the plan would block untrusted Chinese carriers from connecting with U.S. telecom networks in the name of national security, remove Chinese apps, those are untrusted applications, from U.S. app stores because those threaten our privacy and proliferate viruses and spread propaganda and disinformation. But Apple and Google already do that. They have very high security standards about publishing apps, and cybersecurity industry does act as a watchdog for things like that. So this is like total disregard for human rights or free speech, and apps will have to prevent access to users, not even just Chinese users, of Chinese smartphone manufacturers such as Huawei, to ensure that they're not partnering with a human rights abuser. So they just cut off Huawei, who makes so many of the phones that are in use in the world. So in other words, they've run with the TikTok ban momentum, and they want to essentially strangle Chinese tech companies and secure another distracting victory in Trump's trade war. And so these are the first steps to protect the American internet from the outside world, not unlike a certain other regime. Unbelievable.
Well, it's not the American internet, it's the internet.
Well, in America.
Yeah, I got nothing else.
Okay, so I have a smile, and we need one. I love this. This is from the Instagram account of Wire On, and it might seem like he uses special equipment to make this happen. He has photos of superheroes that appear in portraits with his family, and they look to be the same size as him and his family. And his process is actually much more low tech. He puts DC and Marvel comics superheroes in these portraits: the Hulk, Batman, Superman, Deadpool, Black Widow, and they're made to look just as tall as him and his family. And so he treats them like they're regular people, and they're expected to do chores. So they have to clean the back porch and use their superhuman strength to move a mattress. And all he does is he takes his smartphone and he angles it to create this illusion. And you have to follow along with more of his superhero antics on his Instagram. They're hilarious. And so I think that's really funny. So that's the smile. And then there's another one that I have, which is called Igloo. And this is an app that when you move into an apartment, the landlord wants to know everything about you. They check, the kitchen sink of your background. So now there's an app where you can anonymously rate your building and your landlord, and the management of the building. And you can't do that publicly because you'll be banned as a high maintenance tenant if they see that you've written bad reviews. So with this app that allows you to do it anonymously, they don't just give you free reign. You answer questions, and it's a limited thing, but it's really very funny. It's called Open Igloo.
Interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a need for that. The question is, I mean, how how credible can it be for viewers because it's anonymous, right? So I
Well,
mean,
you can't write a lot of things. You're answering questions, you can
so
see whether
is
there are
it
open violations, whether there's a litigation history, whether there've been evictions. The questions that it asks, the only place you really have to say anything, really of your own is in the cons about the building, and you only get like, a headline. So I
so
said,
it's not really open-ended questions. You're
no, it's not
answering.
Yelp,
Okay.
So I said, nasty super, cheap landlord or something like that. And, and then you can, before you go to a building, you can go and see what's been said about it.
Yeah, so then they're compiling all the answers to the closed questions in aggregate so you can get a rating based on those
Exactly.
criteria. I got it. Okay,
Yeah,
that
it's
makes
really
sense.
good idea.
Yeah, it is.
I do have another one.
Well, I got one.
Okay.
Can I? This is called Cameo, and it is a site where you can rent a celebrity. You can hire a celebrity to record a personalized message that you can then give to somebody. So you make a request. If it's accepted, obviously they're not going to accept everything because you can imagine what some people will request. But you can make your request. If it's accepted, you'll get a video recording of your message that you can then deliver to a celebrity. So the prices range based. As you can imagine, there's not a lot of A-listers. There are B-listers and C-listers and F-listers, so the prices range accordingly. Rachel Ballinger was the lowest price one I could find, is a YouTuber I've never heard of.
Yeah, I've seen her.
Get Rachel to record a message for you for $45. Ozzie Guillen, former manager of the White Sox, costs $100. Tom Arnold, $125. Flava Flav, $250. Brett Favre, $300. Lindsay Lohan, $300. Gary Busey, which would be awesome, $350. Charlie Sheen, $500. Mariano Rivera, the New York Yankees Hall of Fame. Is he in the Hall of Fame yet? He should be. Closer, $750. And then Snoop Dogg, $750. Those are the highest.
Snoop Dogg.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I'm definitely going to try this out for somebody's birthday.
That's hilarious. I love that. That's really hilarious. So one more, and this just really cracked me up. Jimmy Fallon plays Trump in yet another video of the Jonathan Swan Axios interview, and he plays Trump interviewing himself, and he just nails him. He's just hilarious. So I will put a note to that in the show notes. I mean, I just couldn't stop laughing when I saw him doing it. And, you have to watch the interview. I mean, it's painful, but you do have to see the whole thing just to understand what we're up against.
Uh-huh. All right, what's next?
Well, more about Donald Trump. The one where he's interviewing himself with his little third grade charts. Project Lincoln did one on that. So they're just, nobody could stop laughing, but it's not funny.
They just keep coming. I get a pro tip. Firefox has it looks like this is brand new. You can get Firefox Voice now. It's a browser add-on, so you can use voice commands with Firefox on the desktop. Install it in your browser, click on the microphone icon, and you can do things like perform searches, ask it to open up your calendar, scroll down the page, and so more voice commands, and don't have to type, and that's always good. Except there's more speakers, right, BL?
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I'm done.
All right, let's wrap this up. I got some stats here on traits of that B2B buyers value in salespeople. This is from LinkedIn. They surveyed 500 plus B2B decision makers who have influence over purchase decisions, and the top among the valued traits among salespeople was active listening, 42% said that was an important value in a salesperson. Problem solving, 38%. Confidence, 38%. Of course, you want somebody who's confident. You want somebody who's trying to sell you something that's not confident in their own product. Relationship building, 34%. Oral communications, 27%. Technology proficient, 26%. Years of experience, 25%. Industry experience, 23%. Cultural critical thinking, 22%, and creativity, 22%. So not very surprising here, but if you're a salesperson selling B2B, it's some stuff you want to pay attention to.
I'm surprised that vocal skills weren't higher. You would think. I mean, you're talking to the person. So we both got today, and hopefully next week we'll be able to do the show using it.
It'd be awesome.
It really will. I can't wait. That's going to be fun. So that brings us to the end of episode 318 of the Beyond Social Media Show. And to find us, you just search Beyond Social Media Show. We're real easy to find. Links to everything we talked about today will be at beyondsocialmediashow.com/318. And we'd love you to let us know what you think. I'm here with David Erickson. He's on Twitter as D Erickson. He's on Instagram at DE Erickson. YouTube eStrategy, and he blogs at the eStrategyblog.com. And I'm BL Ochman. I'm What's Next on Twitter. I'm blogs at What's Next Blog on YouTube. Guess what? What's Next Blog. My website, which I just redid, is blochman.com, and on Instagram, Lucy the Rescue Puppy. The show is beyondsocialmediashow.com. On Twitter, we are BS Media Show, and we are available anywhere you get your podcasts: Google, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, and iHeartRadio. So please do subscribe and listen and leave us a review. And we'll be back next week.
Thanks for watching.